Okay, we're going to tie a fly that I've been fishing for several years now. I was going out fishing with a friend of mine who is a big time bass fisherman, and we're going to be fishing a stream with some really good pocket water. And I wanted a fly that would float really high and skate along the top of the water, so I just tied up something with a lot of flotation properties, and I gave him one of those flies, and well, long story short, I ended up fishing that fly for the rest of the day too because it was so effective. But anyway, the fly is called the Butthead just because there's a little hot spot in the butt and a little hot spot in the head that are the same color. So to start out, I've got an Allen Fly Fishing D202. This is one of their new signature series hooks. It's a really good hook. It's got a razor sharp point. Really nice hook. It's a little bit of an extended dry fly hook, but I've been using it quite a bit for my unsinker beetles and stimulators, those types of flies. So as you'll see, this fly does have a lot of the similar properties as a stimulator, but it's got a little bit of added features, and then I did take out the hackle in the middle of the fly. You'll see when I do that. I'm just starting the fly with Montana Fly Premium in chartreuse. This is 8/0 thread that I'm using. If you're tying a bigger fly, you can use 6/0 thread if you want as well. So I've cleaned and prepared a clump of moose hair, and I've got it in my hair stacker here. And that's going to be the tail. So the tail is going to be roughly, maybe a little bit shorter than the length of the body. So I'll just lay it down right here. And now I'm going to lift up the moose and advance forward. And I want my wing of this fly to start about maybe on the 2/3 point or the 1/3 back from the eye point. So I'm going to take my thread there, lay the moose down, and just tie it off right here. Now as you can see, I've built up quite a bit of thread right here at the back of the fly, and that thread is gonna show through on this body. So once I've got it there and I've got all the moose tied down nice and tight, I'm gonna add the body material. Now the body on this is real simple. It's brown olive ice dub. Now there's something about this color of ice dub that's just really fishy. It's got brown and olive, but it's also got a really nice UV feature to it. It's kind of got a purple hue when it hits the sun. So I'm just going to dub on a thin amount of this and wrap the body. So there's our body, and as you catch more fish with this, it'll kind of get picked out, and you'll see that thread through it, and it fishes really well. Okay, so before I tie in my overwing of deer hair, I'm actually going to put in an underwing of CDC. Now, when I first started tying with CDC, I absolutely hated it because you'd buy a little bag of CDC and you'd struggle to find feathers that were of good quality, and you'd go through maybe 6 or 7 flies and have to buy another bag of CDC. But Montana Fly has these bulk packs of CDC. This is 3 grams of CDC, and I mean I've had this for probably 2 years, and I haven't even made a dent in it. So that's the way I get my CDC now, and I've actually taken 2 feathers and I've lined them up by the tips. So I'm going to take those and kind of preen those back like this, and I'm going to lay that so that the CDC maybe just barely starts to overlap the tail. I'm going to pinch that in place and tie it in. Now here's a little trick to make your CDC wings a little bit more full. Is what I do is I'll tie that in nice and tight, and then instead of trimming these off, what I'll do now is I'll just pull those back and wrap over the butts of the stems like that. Then to trim it, I'm just going to kind of pull those stems, and I'm going to come up with my scissors and just cut the stems. And now I've got a really full CDC wing on the top of this fly, which normally would take 4 full CDC feathers. I was able to do it with 2. So anyway, that's the underwing of the fly. Okay, I've cleaned and prepared a clump of deer hair. And you can do this with elk hair, caribou, antelope, doesn't necessarily matter. But deer tends to just flare just right on this one. I'm going to take it out of my hair stacker with the points facing back. You see how nice those lined up. And I'm going to put those right on top of that CDC. Maybe 2 or 3 loose turns, and then I'm going to gradually kind of get tighter. If you pull too tight right off the bat with this 8/0 thread, it will break. And then I'm just going to kind of come up through those a little bit to really cinch that hair down. And you notice that I didn't let go of the part that I just tied in because I didn't want it to rotate under the hook. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hair and kind of pull it all forward and trim it off at an angle. Just like that. And so now I'm going to lock those butt ends down. If you do that, they won't go anywhere. Alright, so that's our fly so far. At this point I'm going to put some grizzly hackle on it. You can also use dun if you've got dun. But I'm going to take from this whiting half cape, and this is a bronze. And I'm going to grab about a size 12 or 14 hackle. I don't want to use a size 10 because it's an extended fly. It's a little bit longer fly, so I want a little bit shorter hackle. So it's important when you tie your hackle in to take note of the concave section. So the curve of this hackle is facing down on my fly right now. Or if you do the dull side versus the shiny side is facing away from me, so it's facing you. The way that I like to tie in my hackle is I'll peel a few fibers off, and then exactly the way that I want it to sit on the fly is how I'll tie it in. So essentially I'll hold the hackle with the shiny side away from me, and then I will just turn it and tie it in almost perpendicular to the hook shank. And when you tie in your hackle, if you leave a little bit of stem showing, if you can see that right here, I've got a little bit of stem. That will ensure that when you start wrapping your hackle forward, that you're not going to trap any fibers down and have them pushed back. So anyway, I've got my hackle tied in. I'm just going to take some more of that brown olive ice dub, and I'm going to dub over that thread. And it's important on this fly not to crowd the eye, because you're going to build up a pretty pronounced head of thread so that it adds a little bit of a hot spot, just like in the back. So it's okay if your ice dub gets a little stringy right here. Now I'm just going to take the hackle and give it a few turns, just like you would a stimulator. Okay, so one thing also that I've learned, when you come in here and trim your hackle off, I like to grab my thread and pull it back because it's easy to bump your thread and it will unravel off your hook point or the eye of your hook, and it will make your hackle unravel too. So just a kind of a small head, well, enough so that you can see your thread in front of the hackle, and I'll just give it a couple whip finishes. And here's another thing that we're starting to sell. I've been tying with this whip finisher for quite a while. It's got a black walnut grip on it, and it's got a point on the end that you can use to cut your thread. We're actually custom making these. I actually have my father-in-law, who's a woodworker. He's turning all these handles for us, and kind of a cool addition to your desk. Anyway, to trim that thread off, you just poke it in there. Anyway, this is the Butthead. It's probably one of my most effective dry flies. In fact, I just sent some down to New Zealand to a guy, Tim Angeli, really good fisherman down there, and he took it out, and he emailed me and told me how good of a fly it was for him down there. So if it can fool those fish, it surely can fool the fish in our local waters.